Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Today is Wednesday, September 6, 2023, and this is your What's Happening Dracut. I'm John Zimini. I'm your host for tonight's 55th episode of What's Happening Dracut. Thank you for joining us. This is the place where you're going to find out almost anything you want to find out about, particularly what's going on in Dracut. We have the information that nobody else usually gets. We get the star guests that come on here that are willing to come and submit themselves to the abuse that we're going to give them. And it's all in fun, folks. It's all in fun, and it's all for the betterment of the town, and we don't take anything personally. We are coming to you from our awesome, overly ostentatious studios here at Dracut Access Television on Mill Street in Dracut. We are live on Facebook right now, and you can also get us on YouTube if you can't catch us tonight. And Gordy, what do we do on YouTube? You're the YouTube guru.
Yes, we take our copy of our show and put it on YouTube. So if you have a smart TV and you don't have access to DracutTV.org, you can go on YouTube and watch our episodes there.
We have a lot to talk about tonight. We have a lot of things going on in town with the opening of school, other things with Murphy Farm and what have you. We're going to jump into that conversation as quickly as we can. I'm here to try to keep the conversation stimulating, interesting, and moving right along. Guests, our guest co-hosts tonight are the one and only ace reporter of Dracut Access Television and What's Happening Dracut, Richard Silvio.
Hello, everyone.
Richard,
happy to be
you
here.
Started school today.
I
Right?
did, and much to my chagrin, when I get home tonight, I have 20 pages to read on the Neolithic period.
Oh, and we'll get into that at another
Yeah.
time. A Neolithic period it's kind of like
That's a
history
$10 word
repeating
right there.
itself.
Yeah.
Right. And also with us tonight is our ace our ace architect for Dracut, who can't get on many boards that he hasn't been on for many, many years. Phil Thibault.
Hey,
how are you, Philip?
I'm well, thank you.
Good.
I don't know if you saw about a week and a half ago or so, I was stung by a yellow jacket on my eyelid.
Yeah, we did.
And that was painful.
I'll bet.
When my eye swelled.
But now you've got a coyote in your backyard?
So
Four,
it started off with one, and then a friend, he had a friend, and then there was another one and another one. I've seen four. They come around, they lounge around in the morning in the sun, and they eat apples that have fallen from my trees, and
You must have great
they're
apples.
loving it. Well, yeah.
One
It's
coyote
a
said to the other.
right to farm community.
Love
so.
those apples.
Yeah,
at
so
Thibault's.
I've been alerting the neighbors that there are coyotes in the area, and they're grateful to know that. And,
Yeah. Watch out for
my
this.
wife actually called animal control just to let them know that, hey, in the Peabody Ave area, there are coyotes.
Ooh. And of course, we have Gordy Scott, who's back from a vacation out in Wisconsin, the Cheeseheads.
Yes.
And now he's back.
My
and
battery is recharged.
Is it recharged?
It's recharged,
Really?
yeah.
Really? It was 101 you were telling
Out
me.
there was in Iowa. I went to a wedding. Iowa was very hot, but in Wisconsin it was like 82, perfect every day. It was awesome.
What part of Iowa were you in? Because I lived in Iowa for 2 years.
I was just south of Ames, in
Oh,
a
Ames,
small
Iowa.
town.
Yeah. And I lived close to that, to Ames. I was in-
Goldfield. It was a small town, Goldfield.
I was in Ida Grove, Iowa for 2 years. My father had work out there for 2 years when I was in high school, which I cursed him for taking us out of high school and bringing me down there. But anyways, we made it through. We moved back here. But good to see you. Hope
Yes.
Jen's watching tonight. Is she watching?
She is.
Of course she is. She wants to make sure you're
We
a
have her
good
right here
boy.
on the Facebook.
The last thing my wife
Say
said
about
to me.
Facebook, Richard.
The last thing my
dating
wife said
myself.
to me as I went out the door was, "Be nice." I'm always nice. But we have a special guest with us tonight, which we're going to jump right into, and that's the interim, am I correct?
For
the
now,
interim
yeah.
school chairperson of the school board, and that's Allison Volpe.
Volpe,
We're
yeah.
glad to have you.
Thank you
Glad
for
to
having
have you. There is no weather report tonight because Mill City Weather.
He's also on vacation.
He's on an extended vacation in Las Vegas, and we know that what happens in Las Vegas
stays
in Las Vegas. So hopefully he'll come back healthy and ready to go. We have a couple of things that we want to talk about before we get into that. You can join us on Facebook if you're not on Facebook right now. We're live on our Facebook page. Please go on that page and like us and follow us. And Richard, what are we up to on numbers for Facebook? I gave you that
Facebook,
sheet.
let's see. Our followers as of today cap out at 3,238.
Wow.
Our posts have reached 75,000 people, almost 76,000. Post engagement is 30,000. New likes are 112, and new followers is 166.
That's for the last 28 days.
That's correct.
That's amazing, isn't it, Phil?
It is.
And Gordy,
We started at 0.
we don't use any special bots to,
No, we
to
don't.
increase our viewership, do we?
That's correct.
But
No.
there are other shows that do that, right?
Yes.
But we don't do that for our viewership.
Right.
We are straightforward on it, and these are great numbers right from Facebook. That's just Facebook. That's not
Exactly.
even-
That doesn't count cable TV or YouTube.
No, it doesn't count any of those other platforms. But you can join us there, or you can catch us live streaming on DATV at dracuttv.org.
Wow, you got it right.
No hesitation today. I sat in
He's
front of the
been
mirror.
practicing
I
that
sat
one.
in front of the mirror and I kept practicing.
The one with lights in the DATV studios.
And if you don't already know, we're on Channel 8 on Comcast. We're going to get into some of the stuff here tonight. Let's see what's next. We have a couple of upcoming events, right?
Yes, in particular, there's a Dracut's premier event for the most part, in my eyes, Dracut Old Home Day.
Right.
And the Firefighter Activity Day. So it's combined.
That's a big deal.
It is a very big deal. This is the 22nd. It was suspended for 1 year, I believe, because of COVID.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a great event. 9 to 5 in front of the schools on Lakeview Ave. They closed down Lakeview Ave for a portion of the day.
And we will be broadcasting.
We will be broadcasting
Live.
at
11
11
a.m.
o'clock.
At 11
So-
o'clock, so if anybody's at the, Old Home Day,
Yeah,
you want to come by and
stop
say
by.
hello, certainly come by. We're going to try to have our ace reporter as the man on the ground out getting information from the people.
Yes, and then after What's Happening Dracut, I will be with Gay Corey, who is making her return.
Right.
I will be her cameraman for the rest of the evening.
That's awesome. She's coming
You know.
back on with DATV as a volunteer.
Absolutely. I could never be anything that Bob ever was, but I am honored to help her out.
That's
with
great. Now,
making a
Richard, you
comeback.
also have another thing to announce, that some alumni football people from Dracut are organizing.
Yes, so Moose Morawski, an all-time legend with Dracut football, is hosting an event. He is hosting a get-together at the American Legion. By the way, the American Legion donated the hall to him to have this group meeting, and when I asked them why they were donating the hall, their exact words were, Dracut helps Dracut. It's that simple. So I'm going to pull it up right here. I believe it's on the 16th.
Right.
It's a Saturday the 16th from, I think it's 1, hang on.
And, yeah, it's 1 to 4.
Is it 1 to 4?
Yeah, I have it right here. But
Yeah, I have it here too, yeah,
Moose
1 to 4.
contacted me again today, like he normally
Yeah.
does, and he says that he wants to make sure that people realize that this is going to turn into a rally for all Dracut sports. He's going to try to organize something that can, help save all of the sports, and
Well,
not
not-
just football.
Well, not to
We're
mention,
gonna get
John,
into the
it's going to be an
football
annual issue too. We're going to see the same thing next year coming up again.
Right.
Colleen Gary is going to be there, our state rep.
Right.
Your school committee woman, Rebecca Dude, is going to try to be there.
Right.
We invite all school committee members, of course, and I
Yep.
think it'll be a good conversation.
Okay, so we have a congratulations on a wedding to send out to Warren Shaw and his lovely new wife, Mary Jane.
Yes.
They got married this past weekend.
Goodness, I didn't even
Yeah.
know that.
See?
Wonderful.
See that, folks? She got information she couldn't find out anywhere else.
That's lovely.
Yes, from-
Congratulations to
Congratulations
Mary
to
Jane and
them.
Warren on their
Aw.
wedding, and good luck to both.
Yeah, I believe it was a small ceremony at their home, and they had a reception at Four Oaks.
Yeah, it was
But
Lovely.
yeah,
the
congratulations.
pictures online were awesome. So we're going to get right into this. We have our special guest, Allison Volpe. And Allison, tell the folks out there that some of them may not know who you are because they're not involved in politics, and because we have a lot of new people that are coming on with us. Tell us who you are, what you do for a living, for work, and tell us how many children you have and things of that nature. Go for
Sure.
it.
Allison Volpe. I am currently acting chair of the Dracut School Committee. I have been on the school committee now 7 years. I began my political career in 2015 at my first town hall meeting, and I got sucked in, and I've been doing it ever since. So I have 2 children in Dracut High School. They actually, when I started on the school committee, they were in 2nd and 3rd grade,
Wow.
and now they're 11th and 12th grade at Dracut High School.
That's
They
awesome.
were Greenmont, Brookside, Richardson, Dracut High kids. They're doing awesome. Great first day. My daughter's a senior. She's doing work to school to work. So she's able to be out by noon,
That's great.
12:15, so she can go to her job. So she's doing great. My son is playing varsity soccer this year.
Awesome.
Super exciting. And actually, my daughter will be her 7th year on the varsity swim team, and she's a captain this year. So kids are doing great. I work professionally in quality and compliance. I worked at Pfizer for 20 years. Now I'm at a startup called Canixa Pharmaceuticals. I've been there for a year now. Have to commute to Lexington, which is not so fun, but it's a nice little company, and I hope that it takes off. But I'm a director for quality management.
Now, we're going to give
there.
you another little bit of information that you may not know. We have something in common. If you were in compliance,
Yep.
I was, my last 5 years of my career with the state, I worked as a compliance officer for mass housing.
Okay.
So I know a little bit about mass housing and
Yeah.
what goes on, and I was the only person that handled compliance. And it's not always the best job to have in the house, because you're always telling the boss
Yeah.
what the agency needs to do
Yeah.
that might not be right, that you're doing
Right.
now, that you think to change, right? So that's just a little other thing. So tell us, what was the reason that you chose to run for school committee? Besides being sucked in by somebody at town meeting, 'cause that happened to me too when I ran for Board of Selectmen.
Gosh, 2015, I have to think back. Actually, I was friends with Dr. Michael McNamara. If everyone
Fine gentleman.
remembers Dr. Mac. And he had noticed that I was getting involved with the schools. I was posting some things on my social media. He actually reached out to me and asked me if I wanted to run. And this was after I spoke at town meeting, but that's how I started. My daughter is on the autism spectrum, so she was in special ed services, and I wanted to know what's going on with the schools. You know, I wanted to get involved. I know she was struggling, and I know there's no surprise that our special ed department has had some struggles over the years, but I got involved, and now she's a senior and she's doing great. But that's why, really, for my kids, I wanted to see what are the schools all about, and how I can get in and help.
So we have another thing in common.
Okay.
My wife is a special ed paraprofessional
Oh,
in Lowell.
in
And
Lowell.
she's been in different districts and in some consortiums for nearly 20 years. She was in Dracut. She started in Dracut at the Campbell
Okay.
School,
Oh.
but she's now in Lowell. But my oldest daughter, is also a SPED teacher who now has her own
Wonderful.
business called Simply Special Ed, and you can find her through Teachers Pay Teachers.
Wonderful.
And she's doing very well with that. So that's my
Sure.
that's
Well,
my
That's
plug.
your plug.
I might
yeah.
as well throw out a little
Yeah.
something, because my sister was in special ed
There you go.
in Lowell. She is now the principal of a school in Framingham.
Wonderful.
Oh, Fitchburg, excuse me, Fitchburg.
So how did the school year start so far? I mean, I think
Today?
we're into today, it's the first
Yeah.
day. So today is the first day for many schools, yeah.
First day of school today. It was a hot one. Preliminary updates I got from the superintendent. It went smoothly. Minor issues with transportation. Maybe a couple buses were late. I know he's looking into a couple issues where maybe the wrong buses. Just things
Expected.
expected. All these things are expected. But as far as I know, everything went well. I was just kind of looking at the updates to see if there was nothing really.
And there's been a lot of
that's stuck
issues
out.
with Complex Road and stuff like that, and they did a kind of a redevelopment of it.
Yeah.
Was there any issues today?
I
with
asked
that?
specifically, how was the traffic this morning? And I was expecting a flood of, posts on Facebook about how the traffic went, but I think my children got to school on time, and I believe that it went relatively well.
That's great.
I know ridership has increased, at least for the Inglesby, and that's usually the school where you're bottling,
Right.
the bottleneck hit. So I think that is huge. So if you can get a bus pass, ride the bus, it's the smoothest way to go. But as far as I've heard, I haven't heard that it was bad.
Yeah, so most people are probably used to the traffic pattern that was generated.
I hope
With-
so.
with- yeah,
I
I
hope
would
so.
think
And
so.
with new students and everything, and just kind of forgetting your routine in the summertime. I think, it's, I think as far as I know, it went smoothly. People can call in and let me know otherwise. I'm sure they will.
Yeah. So we're gonna, I wanted to get into a couple of other things too, but before we do that, how is staffing, overall staffing for the district? Are they fully staffed? Because there's many school districts and even private schools that are suffering from staffing issues.
Definitely. So as of, I didn't get an update on staff today. I think we have, before we started, we were down 9 professionals, educators, 9 teachers, and 8 paraprofessionals, which is actually pretty good compared to some of our neighboring districts. And I believe that there were a few new hires just today. And just as a note, we have 302 professional educators in our district right now. 50 of them have 20 plus years of service, which I was really blown away by that. I did not realize that we had that many teachers with that many years, so that's really nice to see. But we do have some classrooms that we need coverage for. I know the principals are stepping up, other teachers are stepping up, paraprofessionals, as always, are stepping up. So we're going to get through it.
That's great.
Because I can tell you in the last few years with substitute teachers, because I graduated last year, we would have a lot of absences and they would just throw us in the auditorium. And kids would be running around. It could get a little crazy. I felt so bad for the one sub they would put in there for the whole day.
I would never want to do that.
No, God bless them. So hopefully that's something that we can also work on.
We're always looking for subs. Always, always, always. So if anybody has some time during the day that you want to substitute.
How is staffing with guidance counselors and such? Because I know that's always been an issue in the past.
Yeah, I mean, we still have we have adjustment counselors in all the schools. We have guidance counselors. I don't think there aren't any open positions as far as I know.
So let's jump into the recent appointment of Rob Shepard.
Sure, yeah.
By the way, who's a very good candidate and was a good choice, obviously. But there were some issues, and you and I had some conversations back and forth via text, and I just wanted to, clear up some of the maybe misnomers that are out there and what have you. What did you think about the process itself?
So the process, it was different this year because the past 2 years that we've done this, we only had one nominee. So it was simple. Like, it was 1 year was Dr. McNamara. Last time it was Dr. Truville. So we'd done the whole posting. Nobody else applied, so we had one person. So this time we had 2. And the second person was new to the schools, at least, or new to politics for sure. It was not a name that I had heard of or anyone had heard of. And so that was great. It was great to see somebody else step up, but we only did receive 2 applications. The process itself, once Mr. Wilkie gave his notice, we have 30 days to notify the town clerk. So obviously we notified them right away because we wanted to get it posted right away. So then once the position or the opening is posted, it has to be open for 10 days, and then we cannot meet as a joint board. And that's where the wording is a little funky, because you can't meet before 14 days. Where when I initially read it, after the posting.
Right.
So we posted it, it was posted on the 1st by the town clerk. We could not meet to discuss it until the 16th, because we had to wait 14 days, or maybe it was posted 15 or something like that, 15th or 16th. And so then we had scheduling. We couldn't, get us all in the same room at the same time. So that was the issue. We were not trying to hide anything, but it would have been not appropriate to share with the public when we hadn't discussed as a committee in open meeting. So there was nothing sexy about it. It was just, we had to wait till we could all get in a room together.
Will you agree that this was really a confusing, because even the posting or the information we got from the town clerk, it quoted 2 different things. It quoted the process that was set by the school board, a process that was set by the charter, and then there's a law. I forget the number, 44 or something like that, that has a completely different thing. And, it was very confusing, and I understood that there was some confusion between the school board and the Board of
Yeah.
Selectmen on what the process was going to be.
And I think that confusion came because there were two prior situations where we had one nominee. So when the joint board met, it was easy. I nominate this person. So when we were going to meet as a joint board, the selectmen wanted us to have a recommendation. So the confusion was, for me at least, does the school committee have to vote first and then meet to vote as a joint board? But conferring with council is no, we didn't have to do that. So we decided to discuss as a committee first, as we met right before the joint board, and that's where we discussed the two candidates. And then everyone made comments on the board, and then we didn't vote on it because we have to vote in joint session with the boards,
Right.
both boards. And so that's when we gave the name we did and
Yeah.
voted on it.
Well,
So-
here's one of the questions about your meeting before I watched it and others did. And the question came up is, when you presented the names, you talked about that the board recommends Rob Shepherd. Well, if there's no vote, how can you say that the board recommended the
Yeah.
you know, that might have been a slip of the tongue or whatever, but still, it gave an impression to those sitting at the meeting, I think, that the board was making a recommendation. And part of me said, I know that the Board of Selectmen set up their own policy
Right.
that they want every appointed board or boards to be telling them who they want to serve with.
Right.
But that's not what this process is all about. This process is an elected position that the two boards get together to
No,
elect.
it's not. It's
and
an
the
appointed
but-
position.
But the school board but the position is an elected position. So it wouldn't be a recommendation from you to the Board of Selectmen to make the final decision.
Well, it's an
what
appointed
they-
position to fill the gap.
Right.
And then the next
they have
person
to
is
be
elected.
elected, right.
So it is appointed because we're only, Rob is only going to be on there until the next election. Then he has to run
Right.
for the position.
Right.
So I guess I can see the confusion.
Yeah.
But also, it's completely, when I found out about Mr. Wilkie's retirement, or whatever you want to
Yeah.
call it, my first thought were the three people that ran the prior year.
Yeah.
And
Would anybody on this board want to jump in and, this panel jump in and say something about, maybe it should have been the runner-up for the last
Well,
election?
so that's how the city of Lowell handles it, that if there's a vacancy due to retirement or
I
where they
think that would've been Rob
resign,
Shepherd.
then it goes to essentially the vote getter who had the next highest.
Right.
And that would have to be in the charter, I imagine, or whatever.
Yeah.
Typically, that would be in a charter.
Let me ask you this. Let me first of all commend you and your board for providing meeting notices as well as the backup documentation that's going to be in that meeting.
Yes.
I know it's a tedious job and it's hard to do, but I know that the public, someone like me who's not on the school committee, not in the schools, sees something on the school agenda, wants to see what's backing it up, what's causing it.
Yep.
That's a good thing, a good move towards transparency. And that goes a long way to making people feel that you're being transparent. I wish the Board of Selectmen would do the same, and they won't.
Yeah.
That being said,
Couple of things they should do that they, well, we
Yeah,
don't need to go there,
exactly.
but,
We
I
get
mean,
into
things
that.
that the school committee does that they don't do.
Right.
That
right.
I think they should.
Do you think that maybe where you post these things, these appointments, including the Board of Selectmen, they do the same thing. They post it on a cork board
Yeah.
inside the town hall, and then they put it on the website, which is not easy to navigate. And there's no other notification to anybody.
Yeah.
Do you think that you would get more people to maybe look at it? And
I mean, I
You know?
suppose it depends on where. I mean, we did the same thing. We posted it, we put something on our website under the school committee section. There was a vacancy right there. I don't know, I don't think posting it physically is useful anymore unless you're going to the town hall.
Right.
But I mean, where else could we put it unless we have to put it in the newspaper? But do people really read the newspaper
Yeah.
for these things?
Yeah,
know?
there is, well, maybe there could be a mailing or something that's included in, if there's time,
Yeah.
in your water bill or your sewer bill, it says, things like that. But
They have the
it's-
reverse 911.
and they could do
calling.
reverse 911. too.
Yeah, and that we have talked about that, and I don't know if that's the appropriate use of that.
Might not be.
It might not be, but
because
that
you-
is an option.
It
that
is an option,
you could look
right?
at.
And we have talked about that, and it's really because, like anything else, you see that number on your phone and whatever, you don't look at it. So if you get too many of them, you're going to
Right.
disregard it, and I think that's why that really should be for.
Yeah, and honestly, I think
Emergencies.
most people let it go to the voicemail anyway,
Right.
and then okay, I'll check it
Exactly.
later on.
Does the school committee itself have a Facebook page for information?
Yes.
You do?
We do.
Maybe that's a place it could have been put, or the superintendent could have put it on their Facebook page. I don't know if they did or not. Maybe that's just, it's just
we put it
outside
on our
thinking.
school website.
Yeah.
I think,
What do you think the qualifications are for somebody that wants to be appointed
yeah.
for a seat?
Well, then that's what's so interesting in all this, because really there aren't any.
There aren't any, that's right.
For
There's
any
two-
of the boards, right?
There's two requirements.
Right.
One is that you're a resident of the town,
resident
and
and
that you're a registered voter, I
voter, right.
believe. Right.
And hey, and for some, I mean, maybe that's okay,
Yeah.
right? You
It
should
is,
have a
because
right to do it.
these boards were put together to have the community involved,
Mm-hmm.
and not just the elite people who know. And that's not a knock on a person like Dr. Duder or Linda Truville, who are both highly qualified in the educational field, and certainly Renee Young. I mean, those are qualifications that go above and beyond. But I think that it shouldn't be taken lightly that
Right.
just an ordinary citizen wants to be on, right?
And honestly, I think that, and I was thinking about this as well, what if we got 5 or 10 people? I mean, I would want to interview them,
Right.
So, I think for us, I mean, because of the way the process is, we got 2 candidates, and I think for me, what I was looking at is Rob had run. He's very vested in the town. He comes to all the meetings. He knows the process. It's a short term comparatively. I mean, we really need someone who is already involved. It makes it a lot easier as far as the training go, and also somebody that we know wants to stay in this. Not that Ms. Knight doesn't, but I think Rob has made it very clear to his commitment of this town. Another thing, I was looking at different points of view. I mean, there's no doubt that Mr. Shepherd and I have different points of view.
Right.
And I think that that needs to be represented.
I want to say this to you. It's good that you're here, because that's commendable of yourself.
Oh.
To bring Abraham Lincoln brought his enemies in, and into the government.
Keep 'em close, right? And friends close,
There's
and
nothing
friends
wrong
close.
with that. You had something you want to add?
No, well, just to that point, I mean, a lot of people say great minds think alike. But to that point, I usually say, well, then there are a lot of minds that aren't thinking.
You're right. Exactly.
Because-
Exactly.
And I know that, and I know that some of the things that Mr. Shepherd and I may not have agreed on, I think as he gets more familiar, he's going to understand why. And I'm hoping that that's going to help people who are angry with us right now. I mean, I know a lot of people are still very frustrated with the whole mask thing. There's a whole segment of the community that didn't understand why we did that, how could we do that, but that we have to make our decisions based on the law and also the information that we have. So I think Mr. Shepherd is a very intelligent person. I think that he is a thoughtful person, meaning that he will think things through. And like I said, I mean, I married a Republican, so it's like, I think that it's okay to be disagreeing with people, but we all
That does
have.
not make Brad a bad person. It puts him up on the list.
I know, right? Well, Mr. Daigle that was one of the first things he said to me.
Yeah.
He was like,
Yeah.
he said,
God rest his soul. We
Well,
miss him.
yes, I do.
Because
was-
he would push back on it, on a lot of
Yeah.
things like we try to do, and people take what we do as being bad, and it's not bad. We're not trying to be negative. We're just trying to be, informative to everybody and push back to make things better. I mean, when you're making sausage is not pretty, right? So, when we're making decisions on our children,
Yeah.
that's not pretty. Richard, you had a question?
So yes, so you brought up masking. I wanted to ask you this. They keep talking about the second wave of COVID coming back, all right? where there have been so many studies done on masks, and so many of them do say that they're not as effective as we may have thought, and how it does affect the mental health of our students, if the option came again for the school committee to vote on masking, and funding was up in the air tied to this, how do you feel you would vote on such
Now,
a measure?
before you answer that, remember, she works for a pharmaceutical. Go ahead.
Just a disclaimer, yeah.
Go ahead, disclaimer.
Well, it depends, because is it a mandate or is it left up to the towns? CDC's recommendation, we have to consider all the facts. To me, the biggest driver was we got a vaccine out there that could protect anyone who wanted it and the most vulnerable. So from a medical perspective, as long as we have all these things in place, would I want masks again? Hell no. Does anyone? No, not at all. But like I said, if it's something that the state mandates, we have to follow state mandates. But personally, I think that it's going to be like every year, the flu. It's just going
Gordy,
to
you
be
want-
another thing that we have to get our
Do you want to
immunity.
weigh in on this? Do you think mandates are law?
Well, if they're tied to school funding, you have no choice, right?
Well, no, you can push back.
You can, but
And they're not gonna,
And we
there's
should
no way
leave
you
plenty of
don't
room
raise
for
money,
town for funding. I got my notes.
You know,
but yeah, your hands are pretty tied if it's tied to funding.
I mean, when the government
You can
says
push back,
you-
but-
when the government says you shall,
You shall, right?
yeah,
then that seems to me
but that's not what the mandate was. Mandates were recommendation. Even Dr. Fauci says that.
No, CDC
Dr. Fauci said
is
the other day.
recommendations.
He said that the CDC recommendation was not law.
No, because it's not.
It's not.
It's a recommendation.
Right.
So, but a mandate is a mandate,
Yeah.
a recommendation is a recommendation. So when our new governor decides we have to do it, that's law versus
Well,
recommendations.
I'm not so sure. We're going to respectfully disagree on that because you don't have to go along with everything that the government says, and you shouldn't, because the bottom line is then we have government control of everything. And that's not what our country is based on.
I would also say that our government, with this whole pandemic thing, was kind of playing both ends of it.
They were.
Yes.
So, I mean, you hear them now saying, well, we never made it a mandate.
Yeah,
that,
right.
That was a recommendation if you wanted to do it.
Right.
But, if you didn't,
But
you
go
lost
back-
your job.
You go back and right, exactly.
And
That's
hindsight
coercion.
is 20/20, right? Okay,
Absolutely.
so where we were as a board, non-medical people, we were relying on the medical professionals of the time, or whoever you think it is up to you. But we're relying on information from reliable sources, trusted sources, government sources, whatever, our Board of Health. And also, we had to consider the entire population. We have students that are medically fragile, and something that happens every 100 years, who wants to be the one to have a child in their district die? Not me.
Yeah.
So erring on the side of caution was extremely important in the beginning. And you know what? It's like whether you think masks are real or not, I hope we don't talk about this, or effective or not. But we had to make a choice based on our facts that we had at the time, the information that we had based on the mandates, and considering everyone in that school.
Okay, so we got a little bit off track with the
Yeah.
mask, but you
Yes.
mentioned it, and Richard had a question. But I want to get back on to the appointment for a minute, just to focus. I know that you didn't want to release the names of who were interested, but as a meaning of transparency, at some point you got to you can't tell me, and you can answer this or you don't have to answer it. You can't tell me that the school board and the Board of Selectmen didn't know who the candidates were probably as quickly as you did. I mean, you must have forwarded names to people.
I forwarded, as soon as we got everything, I forwarded to my board members,
Right.
my fellow members. We didn't actually give it to the school, the Board of Selectmen did not request it, actually.
Yeah.
Until I believe you reached out to them.
Right.
And then they requested it from us as well, and then we gave it to them. But that was maybe a couple days, a week later.
Thanks for that plug.
I
It's the
think-
truth, though. It's the truth.
Right, and I don't
But,
know if that's
yeah,
why,
yeah.
but I think but at that point that it was clear there was more than one person. Look, I want to thank the Board of Selectmen for how it's supposed to be written. The fact that they wanted our opinion on who would be best to fill this role. And I really appreciate that they gave us that latitude or whatever. Maybe we need to tweak the bylaws or process a little better. But I think that legally we did everything right.
But the latitude, this is where I'm going to push back with you a little bit on this, and you can take it wherever you want to take it. But you have equal power in that vote to them. There's no recommendation that goes to that board. They don't have the right to reject your recommendation. That's a joint meeting for you to jointly, by law,
No, they
choose
could
a
have not recommended. I mean,
They could have voted
no.
against it, absolutely,
Right.
but it would have still been a majority of that board. The appointment would have held. Majority of whoever was there voting would have held.
Because of who the candidate was.
No, forget the candidates.
So let me ask you this.
Forget
Would you
the
have been
candidates.
so
You're
passionate?
giving them way too much power
No,
by
no,
thinking
no.
that way.
Would you have been this up in arms about it if two people in this room didn't inquire about that position?
No. Yes, I would have been just as up in arms.
Okay.
Two people in this room, first of all, the gentleman to your right quickly dropped out when he
Okay.
found out. And the gentleman to my left, he quickly dropped out. It had nothing to do with them. I want an open and transparent issue for everybody to be
So
able.
then-
There's no reason on God's green earth that you couldn't have released those names. I already had them. I had them before you knew
But
it.
see,
And
I disagree because we had not discussed it in an open meeting as a board. Why should I share? I'm not going to share any information with you today that
Right.
is not already that has not already been shared with the board by
Right.
by the superintendent. I don't think that's appropriate.
Yeah, but the submission of their names to you as a board
It was public information.
becomes public information. The reason why,
The minute it's
so
submitted.
I will,
Well, it was submitted to me personally,
I will
actually.
take it from the point of view of the town manager appointment.
Right.
That was given to a subcommittee of the
Right.
selectmen.
Yeah.
At that point, because it's in the subcommittee, they
It's
do
the
not
law.
have to be, they
Right.
do not have to be released. They can be shielded. And then as soon as recommendation is being made to the selectmen of who the candidates are being moved forward, all of their names are made public.
Right, but in that instance, Phil, you're absolutely right. It's not a subcommittee made up of the publicly elected board. It's a subcommittee of people who are not publicly elected. That's why they're shielded. The minute a public official gets something like that, it's a
So
the
unless,
whole entire board. It's a
unless the
public document.
school committee was going to pare them down, say you received 25 and you wanted to pare them down, you can essentially shield all of them until you pare it down to the 5 that you want, and then they have to be made public.
Yeah, not once you start discussing.
But it has to be
them.
a school, but it has to be done within a subcommittee.
Yeah, but it can't be elected subcommittee. This is why, I mean, I've gone through it with the Board of Selectmen and choosing a
Yeah, yeah.
manager, choosing Duggan and all that.
Well, I've gone
That's
through
why we
it
did
about
You
choosing
did
a
too.
manager,
You
too.
did too. And you don't get credit for the work you did on
Well,
that one,
Allison,
for sure.
let me ask you this. Help me understand this. Do you think it would have been sufficient, once you received those names personally, to email them to all the members of the school committee and then release them publicly? As long as they receive notification?
If you read the policy, it says review and consider, something like that. There's some language in there. So not just know who they are, but have a chance to, I think the word was consider, maybe, not necessarily discuss. So in my mind, no, we did not have a chance to do that. We would have met on the 15th if we could have made everybody's schedules meet.
Well, I think that's basically what the law was saying and what your whole protocol was. And
Well, it said
those
no,
that could-
you could not meet
Earlier than the 15th.
Earlier than the 15th.
Right.
And I would have been happy to meet the next day and get it done with, but we couldn't get anybody's schedules together.
But still, though, it's the same thing as if you run for election. Your name instantly becomes public record.
But
the minute
it's,
you
you're
sign
being
that.
run, you're running for election.
But it's the same thing, and I've checked with the Secretary of State, and I didn't push it, and I don't want to push it, until it happens again. But they should have been made known once you
I
got
mean,
that
push it.
information.
I don't, whatever, or push for a bylaw change, or push for
Well,
clarification.
we'll get to that, but that's for another day, for another fight.
Okay.
But that goes to transparency. There's nothing wrong with telling people who has applied for these jobs, for this appointment. It's a public committee. But let's move on, okay? Because we can beat this to death, right? Let's talk about the elephant in the room, right? The recent Not what you look at.
Not the Republicans.
Who are you talking about?
The Republicans.
Which one?
The door's right over there. The
Let's
door's
talk
right over
about
there.
what
I'm like,
the-
we've
what the
all put
30
on a little bit of weight
what the
this
40 or
summer, okay?
50 what the 40 or 50 people on Drake on the Facebook page are waiting to hear about.
Oh, we have that many?
no, where we had, we had
And
a
to be
lot.
fair, John, just because you brought that up, the weight I did lose 20 pounds over the summer. You better know I put it right back on.
Oh yeah, we're not even talking about that. The bottom line is we want to talk about the football situation.
Oh, of course.
It was a quite a debacle.
It was.
Well, look, we know the passion and the tradition that's held in Dracut with football and football players, right? Which I believe that pride extends to all of your sports and athletics in Dracut.
No,
Kids want to be part of it, but
How
football.
many of you have come to a track meet? How many of you have come to our championship? And I know Phil probably has, but come to the Dracut, the hockey championships, our girls basketball team,
Yep.
state champions.
I was there.
You were there. How many of you were there? You might have been there, but seriously,
I
no.
watched some of it on TV. I watched it.
The same thing with the field hockey process
Yeah.
was the same thing. The same process was followed with both. Football just took on a life of its own for whatever reason. So
Because there's a lot more interest in it by
maybe
by-
some more vocal people, sure,
right.
but you know,
But does that make it? You mentioned it. You're kind of getting a little edge on it, and I want to just pull it back a little bit because does that make it any different for a parent or a kid to be passionate about what they want to do?
I think everyone should be passionate about what they want to do, but being passionate versus being just raging almost or reactive without really trying to understand what's going on.
Okay, well,
that's the problem.
Let's
for
try
me.
to understand. Let's try to understand it. All right. Do you think that the communication between the parents of these players,
High
and-
school kids.
Yeah, what's that mean?
It means that.
What's it mean?
It means, okay, first of all, when you're in high school, sports are different, right?
Really?
When you're in, when
Okay.
you're in high school, you're supposed to.
I'm a high school coach you're talking to, so
and you're
I know.
supposed to be teaching. Do you tell the kids, parents, everything that you do?
I
Do you
tell them
everything
I
that
tell
you
them
talk about in the locker
it's
room?
something that what? No, we don't. We're not talking about locker room stuff. We're
Okay.
talking about the ending of a program. We're not talking about what I say or do or teach
But there
the
was
kid.
no
Let me-
ending
let me
of a
finish.
program.
Let me fit.
You're assuming that the
No,
program
the
was ending.
program was ending.
No, it wasn't.
Yeah, it was.
Okay, you can
you
believe
guys,
what you want.
You may not think that.
No, you may
But-
not think.
all
You
right.
think it's ending. How is the program
Okay.
ending?
It was down to 17 players.
16.
And 16 players, and there was a lot of talk about that this season may not go.
That doesn't mean the program's ending. That means there was a lot of speculation about what's going to happen.
Okay. All right,
There's a
you
big
want to
difference.
mince words in it.
That's
That's
not
fine.
mincing words, John. It's
It is
the
mincing
truth.
words. It is mincing words.
Let me just give you
because
my-
you weren't going to continue a program that didn't have sufficient numbers to field the team. You weren't. Were you? Were you going to do that? Really?
We were going to investigate, and this is what we did, investigate all of our options. And at that point, we were going to make our decision.
2 weeks before the season was to start on next Friday.
What makes you think these conversations were really only happening 2 weeks before?
Because there was no plan in place.
No, not that you know of.
Well,
Now-
why don't you tell us?
Because why not? Because
Why don't you tell us?
It's operational. All right, I will tell you, but you
Okay.
keep interrupting
Yeah,
me.
go ahead.
How many kids were in last season? Ended 34,
Mm-hmm.
okay? Was it any surprise, really, that the numbers have been decreasing?
No, that's one of my
Right.
questions. It's
so,
not a surprise.
Okay, 34 last season. The kids played their hearts out and they had a really rough season. So is it really any surprise that the numbers would be lower coming in?
Right.
Okay. Oh, so where were the parents with that? There were things happening in the summertime.
Where was the administration and everyone else involved to not allow that to happen again this year?
Well, kids, what do you mean the administration and everybody else involved? How can we get kids to play if they don't want to
Coaches,
play?
your athletic director, where's the outreach?
There were events over the summer.
Okay.
That were posted on Facebook. There were word of mouth. I mean, how does everything else get put out there?
Yeah.
The same way.
So why did it take to the last, it'll help me in a minute. Why did it take to the last minute before school started that a co-op had to be arranged with innovation? When I have information and you know it's public information, it's been out there, that Innovation approached the school system last year to do the same thing. And the answer was no then, when you could have had 50 kids on the sideline instead of 34 ending. But that answer from the Dracut School Administration was no.
Why
Do you know
would,
that?
can
Did you
I
know that?
can I ask you
Sure.
why
Go ahead.
we would hesitate to partner with a charter school?
You want to ask that question, really?
I could.
Okay.
I could tell you
But
why.
can you answer the question, why did we wait that long? Why? We knew the problem, and did you know that Innovation reached out last year?
There was not, we fielded a team last year. We had enough players
So-
for a team last year.
Barely.
We
But
had
why-
enough players
but
for a
why
team.
why wouldn't you incorporate Innovation?
But why would we incorporate any school if we had our own team?
Oh,
if
it's
we had
only when
enough?
you need them? Is that what it is?
No, no. We reach out to other schools if we don't have enough for a team. 34 players was enough for a team. 28 players was enough for a team. It's not great numbers, I'll give you that.
It wasn't 28, by the way.
There were 28, and then there were
Can you-
injuries, and there were
There were
people dropping
23.
out.
I'm told there were 23.
And
But
who's
if you
your
can provide-
source?
If you can provide me with that information, I'll be happy to acquiesce to
John,
you.
I don't care if you believe me or not.
Oh,
to be honest.
that's your problem, Alice.
No, it's not my problem.
That's your problem.
If you don't
Because I'm a
believe me-
voter and a registered and a person that's interested in schools, as many people out there are.
Well, you know what? If people are not going to believe me when there is no reason, I have been working in this community since 2015. I have been open and honest. There is no
Well,
reason for me to lie to the public about anything.
I trust but verify.
That's fine, John.
You know?
But I'm sitting here trying to tell you what happened,
Go
and
ahead.
you don't. I have another source. I don't believe that,
go ahead, go
and
ahead.
that's why it's so frustrating.
Tell us.
I already told you we had enough. We had enough players Monday to field the team. I actually shared something on my social media page that showed pictures of all the seasons and of the seniors, and we're all geared up and excited about this season. So, and then within the span of a day, we had injuries, we had people drop out, then our numbers are seriously threatened, though we can't field a team. In the meantime, our AD was looking at other districts, other schools, public schools. Innovation was an option. We were exploring all of them. And so it's not like a decision could be made overnight.
Did you know that in early August there was outreach from Innovation to do it again this year, and that they got the answer that that's not going to happen? Did you know that?
I don't know exactly what their answer was, but I do know that there was a conversation.
Well, did you read the Lowell Sun? Because the Lowell Sun had it.
And the Lowell Sun doesn't ever just take
I'm
things
not-
out of context.
Listen, we can agree that we don't agree with the Lowell Sun all the time. We can agree on that point. That's not a problem. But
Because if you
but I
really
heard
did-
it from more than just them. So the bottom line is that there was an outreach by Innovation, and that we decided no with just 23 or 28 kids, whatever the number was, when we should have been actively pursuing that, I believe. And do you know that do you believe that there's a systematic problem with that? With using co-ops, particularly with, well, let me just jump out to this, and I know we have a caller. They're going to have to wait a minute because we're getting into this really good conversation. And listen, I'm not opposed to what she's saying, and I'm not calling you a liar. I'm just telling you that I have different facts.
That's fine.
Right? And we can
facts are
debate
facts.
that.
You have different.
Well,
I mean,
you got to prove that to me.
Well, you gotta prove to me what are your
I don't
facts.
have to. I'm a person. You
Oh,
are
really?
a public official. You need to make me and the public believe what you're saying. And
Well,
that doesn't
I
mean
believe
just
you
because
already-
you are there that I'm going to believe everything. Show me it in black and white.
Well,
Show
I
me it.
believe you did request that information already.
I did, and
that
I
it-
haven't gotten it.
Well, you did because there's 10 days to provide that
I know.
information.
I haven't gotten it. I didn't do a FOIA. I just made a personal
Well, you're going to
request.
get the information.
Good. Well, that'll be good. But I have yet to hear from your superintendent.
Why do you need to hear from the superintendent?
Because I sent him an email. Isn't it polite to answer an email?
Depends.
Depends on what.
I'm here.
And I commend you for being
Okay,
here.
thank
And I commend
you.
you for being here. And I commend you for responding to me.
And I know
But
you're
you
not
don't
going to
think-
like this answer, but is What's Happening Dracut a legitimate news source?
Yes.
Okay, like
Maybe not to you,
not
but it
like
is.
WBZ or the
Oh,
Lowell
really? They
Sun.
tell the truth too.
I'm just
They
saying.
tell the truth too.
Well, Allison, let me ask you this. Where you just said it, where John just asked you about sending an email to the superintendent,
Yeah.
and you said it might not necessarily be, required to respond and that you're here. Would you say you're here on behalf of the superintendent?
I'm here because I was asked to be here, and I am here on behalf of the school committee, but, my views are my own. But I'm just saying, just because you send an email to something, it doesn't mean that you're going to get a response right away. I'm not saying the superintendent isn't going to respond to you. I don't even know. I have no invisibility into that. I'm sure he gets 100 emails a day.
John, if I can just jump in here quickly.
Yeah.
We had this problem across a lot of the sports, right?
Yeah.
Girls basketball hasn't
Right.
had a freshman squad for a few years, right? What they do in the girls, and I find it a little disheartening because I think they're going too young. I think they're actually going down to 7th and 6th grade
Yep.
girls playing in high school sports. I don't think that's right, personally.
Not here. We would only do 7th and 8th for
Right,
women.
but I've
Oh, I
heard
agree.
rumors they want to go down a little farther because the numbers just
Right.
aren't there to bring them up. But to me, if you're in 7th and 8th grade, this is just my personal opinion, you shouldn't be playing high school sports. It's just the size of the players are
Right.
much different. Same thing would go with football, obviously, right? If you bring maybe some 8th grade boys could play up at the high school level because they're just.
We get that, and that effort is to be commended. But again, you shouldn't have a 12-year-old or a 13-year-old
Right.
competing against 18-year-olds.
18-year-olds, right.
And I coach hockey. I know I don't want a 15-year-old up against a 19-year-old
Right.
in the varsity team unless they're physically and mentally
Right.
able to handle it. It's two different
Right.
mindsets.
And if I may add to that, one of the reasons why innovation was taking longer to consider is because they don't have an established team. They had maybe a handful, 10, 12, I don't know how many students they had at first, wanting to play football. Okay, what grade are they? What experience are they?
Right.
Are we supposed to just take 10 kids from innovation and throw them on a team playing varsity? I mean,
Yeah. Who is it? Do you know? I'll get to it in a second. I'm sorry. We're in a good conversation. I don't want to break
No,
it
but
up.
my
that's the
point is to
point.
support you, is to say,
I appreciate
if
that.
Innovations is coming in with some 8th graders and 7th graders,
Right, we have to
it might
know-
not be a very
Well, I
good thing to
agree.
do.
We have to know who they are.
I agree
Even
with
a
that.
freshman who's never played before.
Right.
Look at the teams we play. Billerica, Haverhill,
Lowell,
North Andover,
Lawrence.
Lowell. I mean, these are
Yeah.
big, solid
Yeah.
teams, okay?
They're coming from 100,000.
Yes. So if we want to build up our programs, let's look and see what these other schools do to build their programs. I can tell you what they do. They don't charge fees, and I can tell you why
Bingo.
they don't charge fees, and I can tell you why we do charge
Why?
fees.
Why don't they charge fees?
Because they have money.
Who? The innovation has money?
They have
They're a
more money
public
than we
source.
do.
They're public source. They're a public
But you know
school.
what? Speaking of that, Innovation is charging their students $400 to play football.
That was going to be a question. I was told recently that Dracut asked for $400.
No, we did not.
Okay, that's good. You see,
No.
that's a good point. Let me throw a statement out to you. This is a statement that got to us through parents and what have you, and from other people. And the statement goes, the administration doesn't believe that they should deal with the academy because they're the competition for students. And that we don't want to lose students to the Innovation Academy as well as Greater Lowell. Have you ever heard that from
Of
one of
course.
you?
We don't want to lose our students.
But not wanting to lose your students is one thing.
Right.
Don't you think there's a problem if you're losing students, not only for sports, but just academics alone?
So, of course I do. And that is a big problem. And I can tell you one of the reasons. I've got my notes here if you would like to hear
Sure.
some numbers.
Sure.
I will tell you the reasons why we are losing students. Because we can't give our students the same services that a Lowell or an Innovation can. And I'll tell you why. You hear people hear per pupil spending in this town, and then they just, nope, I don't want to talk about it. But the reality is, Dracut's per pupil spending is $13,000. Greater Lowell is $21,700. Innovation is $16,920. So if we had $4,000 extra per 3,900 students, how much money is that?
It's a lot.
Millions, right?
1.6
Then we wouldn't-
million.
What? So that makes a difference.
We're gonna go back into that. I held that caller off for long enough. Let's try to bring
It
that
might be
caller in.
George. George
Huh?
Solaris. It might be George.
Can we, caller, are you there?
Yeah, hello.
Who's calling?
Ned.
George.
George, welcome to the show, George Dristolaris.
I said, my name is Ed.
I can't,
Oh,
we-
Ted.
Ted.
You're muffled.
Ted, I'm sorry, Ted, you're muffled. I don't know why that's muffled like that, but let's see what happens. Go ahead, Ted.
I think you're being kind of hard on the young lady.
Being too hard.
They
on
think
the
you're too
young
hard on Allison.
I can't be, I can't.
Thank you, Ted.
Well, you know what? We're here to
Your check's
act
in the mail.
on
No.
behalf of the people. And thank you for calling. Is that your only comment?
No, and I agree with everything that she's saying.
Oh,
She's
good,
right.
good. Good, that's your right, and that's what we welcome you. We welcome you to do that. Do you have anything else you want to add? Can't hear her.
Oh, I hear the TV in the background playing our show.
Yeah. Well, we can't hear you. You got to shut your TV down and give us a call later on. Call back when you can connect better. Thanks
She's
for
right.
calling.
Dracut in the program.
What's that?
Dracut high school kids.
I couldn't hear it. Can you?
Something about high school kids, Dracut program, high school.
All right. Thank you for calling, caller. Call back if your line is better, but shut your TV off. Have you heard administrators make that comment too about that we don't want to lose people to the the other schools that we're in competition with? Why is it a competition? They're public schools.
Because of funding. It is not equitable. Why do people move to North Andover versus Dracut?
How many kids?
The
do you-
schools.
Yeah.
It's not equitable.
So
That
how-
is a
how-
problem.
So what do you think that, I'm trying to gather, now I'm just trying to think off the top of my head. So kids that are going to private schools, they can afford to do it,
I would assume so.
right?
Well,
Because they're still
well,
paying taxes.
It's awfully hard to do it because I did it.
Is this now another caller?
George.
Okay, we have another caller. George?
Dristolaris.
Is this George Dristolaris?
This is he.
How are you, George? Now we can
Hi,
hear you
everybody.
much better. That last
I-
caller was thinking I was picking too much on, and I don't mean to come across that way, but that's just my personality.
Oh,
and
I can take
that's
it.
why- and you can take it. You push back
Allison's a
well.
big girl. She can handle herself.
I
She
can
can
take
handle
it.
herself. Absolutely.
no
So,
You can
problem.
tell I'm passionate about this issue.
Hey,
and haven't
I've got a
slept for
couple
2
comments.
weeks.
I've got a couple comments. As you guys know, I was involved with high school coaching close to 20 years, high school football, and some of the keys to keeping numbers to us was having teachers in the school that also coach football. 2 was reaching out to the Pop Warner program in some type of basis where they support Pop Warner. I know Dracut baseball is very involved with the Dracut baseball program, and the coaches know who the kids are coming up and things along those lines. And 3, I think we need to get rid of the user fee for sports, because a free education is a free education, and I consider sports as much a part of education as sitting in a classroom and opening books.
I don't
So-
disagree, George, with you on any of that. But I do say it has to come back down to, unfortunately, money. Who are your best football coaches in the region? Where are they going?
I
Central
think
Catholic?
it has to be looked at on a larger scale basis. I think you probably can find assistant coaches as teachers, which keep the kids in line in school and it gives support to the program. That was a key. Get teachers back in the school. There's nobody in the school. These coaches touch the kids at 3, whenever practice starts at 4:00 in the afternoon, and you trust me, you lose track of them. And I've watched Dracut football for a number of years because I was supposed to go to Dracut High School, and I have a ton of friends who are football alum, and don't activate them. That's all I've got to say.
Well, I do have to tell you, George, that Dracut soccer for boys
I'm
this
having
year-
trouble picking up.
Can you hear me now?
So listen, I'll talk to you guys later.
Okay, George.
Sorry, I got to go. I'm having trouble hearing you.
all right, thanks. We'll answer the question online. Go ahead.
No, I understand what George is saying. Having the teachers in the schools coaching your kids, that is ideal. That is ideal. It's not going to be possible,
Correct.
obviously. But I do say that just my son plays varsity soccer now. The coaches are both from Lowell. Our team is bigger this year than it's been in the past couple of years. So how do you explain that? The coaches can make those connections when they need to.
Well, numbers do fluctuate
And-
on all levels. As you know, I coach hockey at St. John's Prep. my shameless plug will be that I'll be 40 years at St. John's this coming season. And I've seen the numbers go as high as 56, 57 freshman hockey players, just freshmen, trying out for 24, 25 spots on the freshman team, as low as 30. So those numbers fluctuate through the years. It has a lot to do with a lot of different things. There's 100 different subjects why it happens. But this year we could have a small group. But I think that I don't coach, I don't teach at the school, I never have, but I believe that having a body, one of your members of your staff in the school is huge. And at any level, whether it's a JV coach, an assistant varsity coach, assistant freshman coach, or whatever. In our program, we have an assistant coach on the varsity team that is a teacher. And he communicates with kids constantly. And that's a good thing.
How are your grades? How you doing?
That's a good thing.
And do you know who does that in our school?
I have no clue.
Our amazing athletic director, Paula Chaucy, knows every single one of her kids in all her sports.
Well,
But here's an exact example for this. So I coached the boys basketball travel, and I coached the 4th grade team. Then they just finished 8th grade, so now they're freshmen. So Coach Brian Myers, who was the coach last year, he recruited all those kids, the best of the best, the 8th graders.
Right.
They're all going over to the Voc, and he is now the coach over at the Voc.
Right.
And
That's happening with cheerleading at Dracut High School.
exactly.
The Dracut
So
High
I'm
School
working.
coach-
I'm working right now with the current coach, and I'm coaching off season because I know probably the kids better than anyone because I've coached them. I've been involved with basketball for the last 25 years.
So our feeder program for football is Pop Warner,
Right.
right?
That's where that coach needs to get involved.
And how are the numbers in Pop Warner? Have they gone
Way
up?
down.
They're very
It's-
good.
It's
So
no,
our-
flag football.
Yeah, what?
Flag football is taking
Well,
over for
they-
Pop
So
Warner.
our feeder program numbers are down.
That's not true. This
It's,
year,
they're split.
Okay, but we have kids wanting to play flag football now
Bingo.
because it's a safer alternative.
Bingo.
well, that's another subject that I wanted to get into too. But I wanted to. We'll get into that if we have time. Right now, I wanted to get into about your comment about you started to allude that they're high school students, and you pushed back to me as a coach. And I am a coach at a high school where communication is very important, as it is anywhere. But I meet with my parents every year, and I tell them right up front. I meet right after we pick the team, and I tell them that this is a classroom for us. We don't allow parents of spectators that enter our practices. This is like the classroom, the English classroom. You don't sit in the back of the classroom.
Right.
But when it comes to the mental health of a student, their academics, that's where I'm going to communicate a lot more with a parent, because we got to work together to try to keep the kid
obviously, yes.
in the in school and in the programs. So how do you approach parents that say that you don't want the coaches or somebody to talk to in this particular instance? I think the ball was dropped. And I'm not pointing fingers at anybody, any individual person. I think overall the ball was dropped, that the parents weren't pulled in. And the reason why is one of the systemic problems is that you don't want to lose the student. If you start telling the parent there might not be football this year, they're out of here. That's why there's an MIAA rule that after a certain date, a kid can't transfer and expect to be on the football team or the hockey team. There's a date, and that's fair to the people that have already been working out and trying out. I get that. So
Well-
how do you address that to parents that believe that you don't speak to them enough as an administration, as a school?
I wonder how many of those parents really, ask their own children. I know teenagers don't communicate that great. The
That's
night of
why.
the rally, the principal and Ms. Chaucy said something to the kids, and it was completely misconstrued.
Totally.
So, I mean, okay, yeah. So
We immediately corrected that. by the
Okay,
way.
no,
We
I
immediately
appreciate
corrected
that.
that.
But I think that everyone knew numbers are declining. We had a full team. Numbers got dangerously low within a matter of days. We started, I don't know exactly what the coach said. Honestly, I have not even met this coach, and I knew that they were trying to rally more kids to join. Tell your friends, get people out there. Like, how else do you get people involved in a sport, right? And then things changed so quickly that we realized we have to look at other options. We never said we were not going to look at innovation. Innovation was more complicated for many reasons. And, we lose kids to other schools. We don't want to lose any of our kids. We want all our kids to stay in Dracut. The whole funding mechanism with charter schools is a problem for public schools, and that needs to be addressed. That is something that I want to talk to State Rep Colleen Gary about, because I think that, we're losing next year, for example, $4 million in our chargebacks are going to charter schools. And because I have friends whose children go there, and I would never tell a parent, no, don't go there. You go where your kid should go, and what's best for your child, what's best with your family, and I believe that 100%. I consider charter schools for my daughter. But the reality is, when you go to the VOC, we don't get the numbers, so we don't get the state money, right? But we don't have to pay anything out of pocket. The charter school money comes out of our operational budget, our net school spending, and that's tough. So that's $4 million that we could use for our Dracut kids. We don't want bus fees, we don't want athletic fees. I mean, why would we want any of that? But it's just, the reality is, our per pupil spending is low, our teacher salaries, our paraprofessional salaries, everything's low. Our tax rate is low. If I could remind people of that, I know we're running out of time. Dracut's
you got plenty of
taxes
time.
in 2020, 13%.
$1,000.
Yeah.
I can't read my own
Yeah.
writing. Lowell, 26.
Well, I'll push back on tax rate, because
Well-
tax rate is nothing without evaluations.
Well, we also have
Right.
residential, commercial, so it's
Yeah, but your town
But it's
isn't big
nothing-
enough for commercial rates. And I'd be an
Right.
advocate for commercial
so
rates.
but we're 13% in taxes, and it's almost all residential, so it's
Yes.
like this
You're in- what do you
2023,
mean
it's
we're at the 13th percentile?
We're
13
13
dollars
and some
per
change
thousand.
per thousand.
Yeah,
per
right.
thousand, right?
But it's all based on, you can't look at the tax rate without looking at the evaluations.
Exactly.
Because they're meaningless.
So when the tax rate drops, the evaluation goes up.
It has to.
It has to.
It
It
has to.
balances.
It's
That's
a
what's in
balance.
Proposition 2.5.
But the point is, we take in less money than other towns.
That's
I would say you're correct on that, probably because we started taking less money when Proposition 2.5 was enacted.
And one of the systemic problems of the budget in Dracut, and I'm sure the manager would agree with me on this, is that Dracut has always went to the levy limit. They have never put reserve in the levy limit, which means you don't have to go 2.5% every year.
Right.
When they started, for instance, Worcester, the city of Worcester, doesn't have to go for an override for schools, because they have the levy limit that they can bounce it up. It's already there.
Same thing with Lowell.
And Lowell has that. But now, because we're at the levy limit and there's no push between it, that's been a management problem for years, for 100 years. And Dracut doesn't even ask the town if they want to go to the 2.5, because in the Proposition 2.5 law, that can happen. You can ask the people, do you want to go to the 2.5%?
town
And
meeting-
they could say no.
No, we want 1%.
And the Board of Selectmen could do that, but we never did. I never did.
Yeah.
I know that, because we needed the money, always needed the money.
Well, and one of the things that is a whole nother topic for a whole nother day is the tri-board.
Well, I got that on here. That's next.
I encourage people to watch the past prior to tri-board meetings. They're on DATV. There's some pretty grim forecasts for this town.
We've gone over that.
Yeah.
Yes.
And sadly, I think one of the thinking from town management is to take money from the schools through chargebacks, which would only make our situation worse.
worse, yeah.
But taking money from the schools is like, corporations taking advantage of their tax loopholes. Because that's what it is. The chargeback is a loophole. And that's something you're going to have to go to the legislature to change, because that's in the law.
Yeah.
To allow the chargebacks. And I don't disagree with you on that, and that's a subject to be looked at. You mentioned the tri-board. So where is the tri-board right now? Have they been meeting at all?
We've had 2 meetings.
Right.
The July meeting was rescheduled. We're supposed to meet at the end of September. I think it's September 26th. We're going to meet before the Board of Selectmen meeting at 6 o'clock. We would like to, at that point, at least summarize, I think, and unfortunately, I missed the last one. I wasn't there in person because I was on vacation, but the way things stood with that was, we have a situation here, but there was nothing proposed as a solution. And so there's been, you know, some documentation that town manager Vandal submitted that we want to discuss with her on how are we going to fix this.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, you know, one of your members, I think it was Renee Young, she alluded to the fact that one of the last tri-board meetings that it sticks out in my mind, she said that schools are really protected from any cuts because it's minimum school,
Right.
you know,
School spending.
net school spending, which is up, and it's up a lot since
Right.
in the last couple of years.
Right.
So that's protected, but the town isn't. How much? What's the percentage of money, that tax dollars in Dracut, that goes to schools versus the town?
Oh, geez, I don't
Yeah,
have that.
it's more than 50. It's
So,
what?
so
58, I
it's
think.
about 58%
total
of the
education,
total.
and that would include Greater Lowell and
Which
stuff
we
like
have
that,
to-
and ends up being over 50, well over 50 or 50%.
It's 58% of
And how many people do we employ? You know, we have over 400 and something employees.
right.
So it's not like it's a small enterprise. You
No,
know?
no,
It's a-
no,
it's a
no.
big-
We get that. We get that. But that swing has taken 30 years to go because
Well, some
it
schools.
used to be
some
the town
schools-
had more money than the schools, and now the schools have more money than the town.
Some schools, as everyone knows, if you're a school teacher, you get lifetime benefits, right?
Yeah.
Some schools have gone away from that.
Mm-hmm.
Some states in the country have gone away from that and gone to private 401k. You know, the town
Well,
will
that's
match
a
a
bigger
certain-
Massachusetts. That's a bigger issue that
Right, but I mean, that's
the unions will never allow that to happen.
exactly.
You know?
So if I may throw in, if I had to make a choice between the tri-board or what the town should really be doing, go back to what the town should be doing. I mean, we had a master plan that said, hey, we need economic development. To get economic development, we need to reevaluate our zoning bylaws.
Right.
They're
We-
kind of in the process of that, but over the last 2 or 3 months, a lot of that has been, any changes have been pulled back because of the
Well, when
selectmen.
did we finally approve it, in 2017? Or did
The,
we start it
the
in
town,
2017?
the master plan was approved in 2020.
2020, so it was a 3-year process.
It was a
And we
3-year
had, I
process.
thought, pretty decent community input
By
for
all
that.
accounts, it was excellent. From our consultant, who was NEMCOG,
Yeah.
said they had a lot of positive response for the committee, and it was a committee of 17.
Yeah.
And there was only 1 or 2 meetings that we really didn't make quorum. So I mean, we had a committee that was dedicated
We
to
put
it
a lot
too.
of work into that, and you know, if anyone was able to read it, it would have been clear that we were going to need a
There-
new school. You
there-
know, that
right.
was in there.
It-
Our population's
It
expanding.
did
yeah.
outline a pathway,
Right.
and one of the biggest pathways was, hey, we need economic development in this town, and we can't do it, we can't get there by doing the same thing that we've been doing.
And there's no real outreach for economic development, and you can't. Nobody can look at me with a straight face and think that what Dracut is doing for economic development is going to move the needle to be able to get more economic.
We need industry, better
You need industry. You need industry. You need $50 million projects and businesses to come in to really move the needle. I mean, we know that Murphy Farm is going to bring a lot of problems to Dracut. It's a whole other show. We can do that, and we're going to talk about that on Saturday.
On Saturday, we
and
have-
we're going to
we
bring
have
that in.
somebody
So
from
we're not
CART
going to get
coming
into that now. But the ramifications of that are enormous, as well as the fact that we just don't have enough industry in town. You know, the tri-board. What do you think the tri-board's purpose is? What was it supposed to do? Was it supposed to just bring to light the shortfalls, or was it supposed to be advocating for ways to change?
So there's no real specific charter for it, as far as I know. I believe that finance and school committee were the drivers of bringing us together because of concerns. We have a finance committee now that is not interested in just rubber stamping. They are actually a very intelligent group of folks that are looking at numbers. They are looking at the future, and you know, they know our town is growing. Oh, thanks,
Yeah.
Richard. And their job is to recommend financial decisions to be made for this town. And this group is like, we need to inform the public where we are
Okay.
and where we're headed.
But you realize-
we asked to come together as a board. Now, the last time there was a tri-board, I don't think I was even on the board yet. That might have been 2015. And that, yes, because the three boards came together, and what came out of that was the Joint Budget Task Force. And I spent the summer in those meetings. I wasn't even on the board yet. I spent the summer in those meetings, and it was Selectman Hughes and Tony Archinsky and Betsy Murphy. I forget who else was on there. But we basically sat there and said, we're going to run out of money. And that was 2015. So it's disheartening for me that we're in the same place, and it's actually worse because the cost of education has gone up, inflation has gone up, the cost of building materials has gone up, everything's gone up, everything. And so where are we going to be in 5 years? We're looking at a deficit, and I don't even have the numbers here because I have to.
No, we know what the numbers are.
Right.
We've gone over it a number of times. It's not a good. It's not a pretty sight. Next year it's it could be close to $2.5 million overall, but then it balloons to over $7 million if certain things happen.
Right,
But
exactly.
the bottom line is it's not a good thing. The big thing in this whole discussion is the taxpayer.
Yeah.
Dracut's a conservative town.
Yep,
Always
right.
has been. Always has been.
Yeah.
And I don't think, I've listened to the people talking about demographics changing. I don't believe they've changed enough to make that swing that people are going to want to dip into their pockets more. Do you believe that there should be an override for operational expenses, which is a permanent tax?
Right. Well, it depends. Do we want to grow as a town? Do we want to thrive as a town? Or do we want to start shutting down services? Do we want to close the library? Do we want to close the senior center? Do we want to take money in chargebacks from the schools that are already losing money? So it depends on what you want as a town. Do I want my taxes to go up? Of course not. But,
Yeah, okay. Who is it? Okay, yep, we'll get to him. Go ahead.
but what's our alternative? My job is not to decide what we're supposed to do. That is the Board of Selectmen, town manager, and consultation with the Finance Committee. And what's been so unfortunate for so many years is that people are saying the schools take too much money, the schools need too much money. Well, you know what? Because of the legislature and efforts by MASC and all these other organizations, the bar has been raised. So our net school spending requirements have been raised. So this time, the schools are at a better place. We're still at the bottom, and we're still only funded at the minimum, but our bar is raised. The rest of the town, I don't know.
Well, the taxpayers are going to be looking at this, and the taxpayers will decide
Of course.
whether or not, not the Board of Selectmen, not the school
And
committee.
the taxes can only go up by 2.5%
Right.
by law unless you do an
Well,
override.
an override,
Right.
you can pass an override if
Right.
you get enough votes, but it's
But I guess-
historically that
Right.
you're not going to get it here.
And I
You're
guess,
not going to get that.
but this is what frustrates me, that there's so much outrage over football. And believe me, I'm a sports mom. I get it. My daughter almost didn't have a swim team, and this would have been her 7th year as a captain. I get it. But where's the outrage where we still don't have a finalized contract with our paraprofessionals. We still don't have everything that we need for special education.
It's because it doesn't hit home. Their
a-
kid coming home complaining that I can't play football hits home.
But that's
the
a
stuff you
problem.
mentioned
Right.
doesn't affect them
It's
personally.
not
That's
new
why.
to Dracut. It's not
Right.
not only Dracut that has it. It's all across the country. That people, you talk about economics, everything going up. The average household is losing $3,000 to $5,000 a year
Right.
because of the current economic situation in the
Correct.
country. $3,000 to $5,000.
I think it's
You
more
think
than
they're
that.
going to
I
want
think
to
it's
put
more
more
than that
money into
because-
taxes? I don't think so. I don't
It's
think
like
that's gonna happen.
$500 a month, which
That's
is
a-
like $6,000.
We're going to segue. We're going to listen to Moose. I got to thank her. She's really
Awesome.
stayed the whole time so
Yeah.
far. This has been a great
I
discussion.
know you haven't given me
A great discussion.
Kick me out
Brad, I'll buy you a drink afterwards. Let's,
He's probably not even watching, is
Moose
he?
Morosky,
I don't believe so.
you're on here, buddy. What's going on?
I can't hear you. You're all static.
Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now?
Just
Okay, I can hear you now.
Okay, give us your quick question. We're running out of time here. This has been a great hour and a half. Go ahead.
Well, it's not only
Okay.
okay. I have a meeting of all former football player and athletic people at the Dracut American Legion. Okay, on Saturday Saturday the 16th, and to discuss the way the athletics are being run in Dracut. Okay, and I want to back on the numbers last year at Dracut. Okay, Thanksgiving morning, there was 18 kids dressed, 85 kids from Methuen dressed. It was embarrassing. It used to draw anywhere from 7,000 to 8,000 people. Where we lost the revenue there. Okay, we've seen this program stumbling and bumbling, okay, for the last 8 to 10 years. But we did hire five coaches in that period of time. Okay? So I don't understand. And I've talked to I went to every game at Dracut, okay, and talked to the coach from Dracut, and he didn't get himself involved, but we know what was going on. Okay, so I am going to bring it out on the 16th, where we stumbled and bumbled, okay, in Dracut. Okay, now, you talk about, I'll tell her who the coaches are better. The Tewksbury coaches get better, Airwood. They're a town that's smaller than Dracut. Why are they winning constantly, over and over and over? Okay, and let's. I went to the girls' basketball championship and so forth. Okay, but let's see what the program does. Now, the present coach, in defense of him, he went to Pop Warner and talked to somebody in Pop Warner, and then they said, no, thank you, we don't need it. We'll run our offense and defense. So that's where it starts. Your numbers in Pop Warner are very low. The only group is the young group. Okay, flag football is the biggest numbers in Dracut. Okay, we should be reaching out to them people, and especially to the woman, because they're all worried about concussions. So why don't we just bring in the helmet people?
Yeah.
bingo.
Well,
Okay.
we're running out of time. I got to cut you short there, Moose. I wish you called a little bit earlier. You're right. But we'll be at that meeting, and hopefully Allison will come and other school members, and we'll all sit down and try to hash it out. We're going to try to help the programs. Thanks again for calling, Moose.
Yeah, and Allison, you were invited.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, thanks again. Let's get some rapid fire answers. All right. First of all,
haven't we done that all
Lightning,
night?
lightning round.
first of all,
I'm on no sleep for 2 weeks.
personally, as a resident and a voter of Dracut, how do you think you would stand on an override for operation expenses? Without getting into the depending and all that stuff, I'm not going to be in favor of that personally. But where do you stand?
I'm looking at the big picture, and I am fortunate enough that my husband and I are both working, I could
Yeah,
afford it,
okay.
okay? I understand why people can't.
Ned has a very quick question.
Who?
Ned.
Okay.
Ned.
Hold on.
Personally, if it were submitted, I would support it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, do you think that the debt exclusion override for Campbell School might be jeopardized with the fact that people are going to be hit with a possible override for operational fees and a school? Do you think they will want to dip into their pocket for a $400 million school or schools, and then also go for another $300 or $400 a year for?
I don't think it's palatable to anybody. But the reality is, what else are we going to do? When if Murphy Farm comes in, I mean, what are we going to do? I mean, I really don't know. And this is where I get frustrated, and this is where we need town manager, board of selectmen. They should be leading us on this. They should be guiding us on this. If you watch the last override, you'll see that I don't think any of them will support an override.
Yeah, but does leading mean that you're for an override?
No, it means you're just honest with the public.
Yeah,
and
I think you're right.
You're giving the numbers
Right.
and the
So
reality.
when Tony Archinsky resigned from the tri-board recently, which you know he did, right? You know he will not attend anymore.
No.
He's publicly sent in a letter to the board
Oh, really?
stating that he's not going to be part of it because he thinks that the tri-board has taken a new view, has gone to advocating for overrides when he knows that his constituency and the majority of Dracut doesn't want overrides, especially for operational.
So he only cares about his reelection?
No, I think he cares for what he's elected for. Who do you represent? Who are you elected to represent?
The community.
Yeah, the community or who? The voters? The voters put you there, right?
You know,
Well, let me just
Are
say,
they just-
at some point,
Are they just?
You-
are
you-
they just in the
No,
way?
one minute.
but at some point you realize that you're just Sisyphus and you're trying to push this rock up the hill and it's not going to work. And I'm sure that's the point that Tony's at.
Right, right.
well, I will say this, and I don't know. I know we don't have a lot of time, and I just don't
Yeah.
want people to misunderstand. I get the football thing. I get the sports thing. What I want, though, is the same kind of activism, the same kind of passion, the same kind of coming together to fix problems instead of just reacting and getting angry. And I mean,
And that anger is going to come more when they do the overrides.
and you know what? And if it fails, it fails.
Yeah.
My kids are almost done with school. I mean, you know, they're going to be fine, but I worry about the younger folks.
Right.
And then this is the population that needs to become involved.
Let's shift a little bit here. What do you think about parental rights
What do you mean?
in schools? Parental rights in schools. What do you think about that? Do you think a person should have a right to know whether a child is being taught in sex education or whatever education, whether about intercourse and things of that nature? Should they be taught hygiene and the anatomy of a body? What do you think about
I
that?
think that there are health frameworks that are developed by the state that are actually being revised. I don't know if they're fully approved yet, but yes, we need to teach age-appropriate health education to our children.
Do you think parents should know if a counselor has been told by a student in the middle school or the high school that they may be
They want to change gender.
they may want to change their gender? Do you think a parent should know that?
First of all, our counselors are not.
Go ahead, don't
done?
worry about that. You
Our
gotta go.
counselors would not do that because that is not a counselor's job.
Well, you know it's happening in other school systems all around the country.
I've heard various things. Yeah.
Yeah, but so how do you feel personally about it? Do you think a parent should know
Absolutely.
and have a right to say?
If a counselor came to me and said, "I've had a conversation with your child and they've expressed this," of course I'd want to know.
Do you know there are public schools in our local area that don't allow the counselors to tell the students that? You can't tell them that?
Parents.
You can't tell the parents that? It's happening.
I don't. Yeah.
It's
I don't know.
happening.
And it might have to do with age too. Are we talking about a 16-year-old?
No, we're
or are we
talking about high school kids. We're talking about high school kids.
Well, I know that it's at a certain age, you know, I think the rules change with HIPAA. I mean, I don't quote me on any of
I know.
that, but I think it
I know
might
we're going
be
a little bit over
different.
time, but I think we can stretch it in. Your political future, where do you plan on being
Oh.
in a couple of years?
I don't know.
There's rumors out there that say you might run for Board of Selectmen.
That would be the logical next step for me.
Okay.
Whether or
And-
not it makes
Yeah. And,
Whether or not I survive the next 2 years is a different story.
you'd be challenging Jennifer Kopczynski and Tony Archinsky.
Possibly.
Yeah, and there's also rumors about a run for representative. Is that something that you're
What?
thinking about? Yeah. You should take that as compliments. People are saying that about you.
I have to finish out my real job. But when I retire from my job, I think my second job, I would be interested in pursuing more.
This has been a great conversation, even though I know you got a little upset. I got a little upset
I
about
know.
how we would. But listen, come back. Will you come back?
I'll
Will you
come
commit to
back,
coming back?
yes.
Good. Because communication and information is what alleviates a lot of these issues and a lot of these problems.
Are we still
All right?
on?
Anything else, guys?
We are.
Anything
Oh,
else?
we are. Okay.
We're still on. So let's wrap this up, Gordy,
Okay.
because we're already a minute over.
Thanks for this. This has been a great conversation. I'm sure our ratings are going to be through the roof on this show. But thanks for watching. When
That can be
it's,
arranged.
when it's Wednesday and it's 6:30, it's What's Happening, Drake. Good night,
Bye,
Drake.
Good night,
Good
everyone.
night.
Thank you. Thank you.